All right. So, like I said, thanks very much for coming, everybody. My name is Adam. I am one of the careers consultants as part of the careers team. And in this session, it's quite a wide-ranging session. So it serves as kind of a top-level introduction to what careers are like in the UK, how the careers land kind of lies. Now, like I said, this is being recorded. What I'd like you to do before we make a start properly is if you could scan that QR code for me, please. What this allows me to do is make sure that I can register your attendance, and then I can then send you the slides and the recording. You'll get that sent towards the end of the week, but it's just so that we can get a sense of who's come first of all, and make sure that everyone who wants to get the slides and the recording gets them, and you don't have to then take notes and all that kind of thing. I will show this again at the end. So if you don't have your phone to hand, or you've joined on your phone and you're not able to do this, bear with me. At the end, we'll sort that out as well. All right, let's get started properly then, shall we? So, first thing, as international students, unlike what I'm going to refer to as domestic students, you have some hard rules that you can and can't do. And the first thing to think about is you have a hard limit on the amount of work that you can do while you are studying full time in the UK. Now, for undergraduates and postgraduates, that's hard limit 20 hours a week. The university generally suggests no more than 16, but if you want to go to 20, that's up to you, but you can't go over that. So it's a hard and fast rule. For PGT, it's slightly different. You can work within term time and full time over Christmas and Easter in the UK, but you cannot work over the summer. So again, there's a hard limit there. Now for PhD students, this is again slightly different. As you can see on the screen, you can have 8 weeks of leave per year, and you can extend that leave, which is when you can work. But it's different to undergrads, postgrads. You can't work that 20 hours per week. You have to do it in your leave. Okay. Now, this is important. The last thing I want to say on this doesn't include self-employment, so you cannot start a business while you are an international student. It doesn't reach that, I'm afraid. So these are your hard and fast rules. Now, in order to do this, just to, I guess, be aware of a few things. This is the minimum wage structure in the UK. This is how it works. Now, it very much depends on your age. However, national minimum wage at the moment for anyone over 21, they've simplified it recently, is £11.44. Now, this is going to go up in April. I don't know exactly how much to, but you can find that information out on the government's website, and I'll be updating these slides as we go. Like it says there, it'll change in April. But this, if you're applying for jobs now, this is your national minimum wage. Don't need to stress about it too much. You just need to be aware of that. If you're seeing things that are less than that, they tend to be a bit sketchy. So avoid those. Okay. Now, in order to do this, in order to work while you are with us, you have to have a national insurance number. Hopefully, most of you will be aware of that or know that. However, if you're not, the process is really simple. As a student at the University of Manchester, you are eligible for a national insurance number. All you have to do is go onto the government website and you'll see this is how it looks. All you need to do is apply online. What will happen is it will take you through the application process. It will then tell you that it'll take between 4 to 8 weeks for a decision. During that time, you are able to work, because what it will do is provide you with a temporary national insurance number that you can apply to jobs with then and there. You'll then start using your actual national insurance number when you get that through. It is dead simple. All you've got to do is apply online. We can't help too much with that in the sense that it's the government process. It does walk you through it. It is dead simple. So this is your first step. Okay. Now, like I said, any questions in the chat, please feel free. I'm going to talk a little bit about visas. Now, this again is a very, I'd say, top level about visas, and I'm going to focus on two, which are the most important to international students. Now, the first one has two names. You'll hear it referred to as the graduate route, as I've done here, or the PSW, the post-study work visa. Now, this It's relatively new. You can see there it was introduced in 2021. You apply for it, and this is important, you apply for it roughly 3 months before you are due to graduate. So make a mental note of that. And depending on your level of study, you can either stay to work for 2 years or 3 years. 2 years for any undergrad or postgraduate, and 3 years for a PGT or other doctoral qualification. However, while there are some really good things about this visa in that you don't need to be sponsored, you can work for the 2 or 3 years, you have the right to work for that period. There's a couple of things to think about, okay? You cannot extend this visa. It cannot be extended. It is a standalone thing. It lasts for those 2 years or those 3 years. And once you've had it once, that's it. And then the other thing is this does not count towards residency. Now, for some of you, you might be aware of this already. In order to apply the current rules for residency in the UK, you need to have been here for a 5 consecutive year period working. This 2 or 3 year period does not count towards that. Now, I would advise for everybody, basically, to apply to this 3 months before you are graduating. You can always switch from the graduate route to the skilled worker visa, which is what I'm going to talk about next. It does cost some money, so you have to be aware of that. If you can go straight on to a skilled worker, that's always better. But if you don't have anything lined up, then you need to think about applying to this. If, of course, you want to stay in the UK. And then there's the skilled worker visa. This is something that is different. Now, this is offered for skilled employment, graduate level, what we would say, and you can switch into the skilled worker category straight away while you're on a student visa if you are offered that role. And it means if you're on that 5-year route to settlement, then it counts towards that. There are some hard requirements though. There are certain salary thresholds that you'll have to meet. Now, at the moment, the salary threshold sits around at £38,700. There is a discount for various types of roles and for certain ages. Under 25, for example, that threshold is significantly lowered. But the key for this is that you cannot just do this yourself. This has to be sponsored by an employer, and sponsored by an employer that is on the register of sponsors. Not all employers can sponsor you. And what I will do is talk to you in this session about how you can find those employers. But this is the key one. This is what most international students are looking for. I'm not going to say all by any means, or rather most that are looking to stay in the UK. So what I will do later on in the session is talk to you about how you can make the most of this, how you can target these employers, how you can find them. For any more visa queries, that's like I say, this is the top level sort of introduction to it. What I would suggest is go on to UKISA, that acronym that I have at the bottom of the screen, UKCISA. That is the website for international students in the UK. There's all sorts of information on there about visas, but about how the job market works. It's a really good resource that I would suggest you all use, whether it's for the skilled worker visa, or potentially even for finding work while you are studying. Okay. There are lots of other resources available that I would suggest. The best one, or the one I like most, that I'm going to talk a little bit about, is eCareersGrad. This is on Career Connect in the International Student Pathway. This is where you have all sorts of guides, depending on sectors, about how to get into that profession in the UK. It also has a much more, what would I say, user-friendly version of the list of sponsors. So the list of organizations that can sponsor you. You can search, you can check what organizations do sponsor, how many people they take on every year. It's a really useful resource, so I would suggest that. Latitude Law, this is a law firm that we partner with that runs visa talks, runs drop-ins all throughout the semester. All of those events are on Career Connect. The last visa talk, I think, was either a week or 2 weeks ago, and we'll be running another. So have a look out for that. There's a lot more detail on visas in those sessions. Going Global is, again, on Career Connect and on our website. This is a really useful resource for, I'd call it a plan B. So let's say you're not that bothered about the UK, or you want to have multiple options. So you want to work maybe in the UK, but also other countries. Going Global talks about different countries, how employment works in those countries, and gives you country profiles. And then the last one, our LinkedIn group for international students and graduates. You'll get all these links, so don't worry too much about taking them down. But that is a LinkedIn group we've set up for international students and graduates to share the resources we've got available, the support we have. So definitely get yourself on there, and you can do a bit of low-key networking through that group. Okay, so that's all on visas. Now, what I am going to do is go through, it's quite a whistle-stop tour, but I'm going to go through how to apply for a job in the UK. Now, this goes for whether you are looking for a part-time job while you are here, whether you're looking for a graduate job. So this is going to be a sort of crash course in how to apply for roles in the UK, because depending on where you come from, might work very differently. Now, on the screen, broadly speaking, you will have everything, or as near as we can get to, that a student can do to look for a job. You've got some of the obvious ones, things like recruitment agencies, job boards and employer websites, but also maybe some of the less obvious ones, right? Personal networking, the career service, Career Connect. What I generally talk about, and this is in a little bit less detail to, for example, the job hunting workshop that I run, but I talk about creating a rotation of activity, which means that when you are looking for a job, you want to be doing a little bit of lots of different things. You do not want to be relying on just one way of finding a job. You need to have a more structured, more, what's the word? Yeah, just more structured approach, really. And I think that goes even more for international students, because you have particular barriers, particular things you have to get around. Sponsorship is a big one, but there are also things like adapting your CV. So you guys need to be a bit more structured still and more focused. That is really important. If you are just applying to literally everything you think you would be suitable for, you're going to have a difficult time, because it's going to be very demotivating. What you need to do is have a focus on what you want to do, what you're applying to, and a structure to achieve that. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is try and help you maximize the results you get out of all of these different parts. And the first thing I'm going to touch on is general job boards. So here are some of the job websites that you could use in the UK. Things like Total Jobs Read. These are general job vacancy websites. The biggest one in the UK is called Indeed. Now, they all work more or less the same in that they are a search engine for a database of jobs. Now, you may have used some of these before, I don't know, but my experience of them, the students I speak to, their experience of them, it can be really frustrating, because they'll get, I don't know, they'll put marketing executive into the search engine and they'll get loads of results, and most of those are not going to be helpful, right? That is because it is operating in the way that a search engine operates. So if I put marketing assistant into the search bar in Indeed that you'll see on the screen, what that does is look for everything with the word marketing in, everything with the word assistant in, and throws it up on the screen, which is why you get loads of results, but most of them aren't useful. So instead of doing what everybody does, what I want you to do is use what we call a Boolean string, right? Those words, marketing and assistant, they are search terms. The and that you can see there that I put in capital letters at the bottom left, that marketing and assistant, that and, because it's in capital letters, acts as an instruction. So what that does is look for everything with those two words in combination. So rather than look for everything with marketing and assistant, and it looks for something with those two words. So it's a little bit more powerful. The next one, the speech mark, so graduate marketing executive in speech marks or quotation marks, that will make it look for that specific phrase and nothing else. So it's a lot more powerful, a lot more focused still. And what you can do is the last string that I've made is graduate. So we know we're looking for something with graduate in it, and then and. and then something like in the brackets marketing or communications. I might put public relations in there, anything around the marketing and comms agenda, right? Now, what that does is still keep it quite broad, but still also quite focused. What I would suggest you do, and this is your first part of your rotation, right? This is your homework. When we're finished today, when you've got a set some free time this week, do some experimentation with some of these terms. See what's working for you. See what gives you the most sort of relevant results. What you can then do, and these are your search terms. I've kind of explained all of these, but like I say, play around with them, experiment with them. And what you can then do is create an alert on something like Indeed towards a specific search. So here on the right hand side, I've done what everyone does, right? I've put marketing in, and you'll see exactly the problem I've described. 610 jobs, but most of those, they're sales roles, they're coordinator roles, they're not what I'm looking for. On the left hand side, all I've done, really simple, marketing and graduate. 19 jobs, all of them graduate marketing roles. Hopefully that shows you how much more powerful that can be. And what you can do there is create an alert towards that specific search. And just like that, you've automated probably the hardest part of your job search, because this can really frustrate people. Now, for international students, let's say you're looking for, I don't know, let's say you're looking for a graduate role once you finish that you want sponsorship with. The thing I would suggest, and this is to add to your rotation, before you apply to anything that you get through a search like this, make sure they can sponsor you. Make sure they are on that register of sponsors using either eCareersGrad or the government's website, whichever you feel is easier for you. I'd suggest eCareersGrad, but if you don't like that tool for whatever reason, just make sure that they can sponsor you before you apply, if that's what you're interested in. It's another step to the process, but I guarantee you, just putting that little bit more focusing will make it a lot less frustrating further down the line. Okay. Now, in order to do that, what I would also suggest, and this is making it more focused still, create a target list of organizations that you are interested in. A list of companies that you know you would be interested in and want to work for and you know can sponsor. Now, I've showed Google Maps on the screen. There's a reason for this. This is a really easy way to find employers in your sector. So let's say I'm looking for construction firms in and around Manchester. Now, most of you, if you're interested in that sort of work, you know what the big ones are, right? Mace, Atkins, Laing O'Rourke, all sorts of others. The smaller ones, that's harder, right? Small companies in any sector are difficult. However, all I've done is put construction into Google, switch to maps, and straight away I've got a list of all the construction firms in and around Manchester. And the beauty of this, especially for international students who tend to be a bit more mobile, you can do this for Manchester, you could also do it for Bristol, you could do it for London. So it's a little bit more powerful, right? Now, again, you've got this list. Check to see if they can sponsor. Then what I want you to be doing is going and checking their recruitment websites, their job portals on a regular basis, once every week, once every 2 weeks. See what's coming up. See if they are recruiting, when they're recruiting, all that kind of thing. Again, it's another step to your job search, but the more structured, the more focused you are, the more results you are going to get. And honestly, this will help no end. And you'll be applying to jobs that other people just aren't even aware of because they don't even know these companies exist. Okay. Now, if you are doing this right, if you are applying to these jobs and you're gathering all this information, you will be applying to quite a few. Now, I am not someone that says you need to be applying to 10 jobs a day. The reason being, I don't think that's sustainable. If you do that for a couple of weeks, you'll be absolutely exhausted. You'll be hearing nothing back because you won't be able to put loads of effort into applications. And then you'll get really frustrated, really demotivated. I would say aim for between 3 and 5 a week, right? And in that, you want to be putting effort into those applications. You want to be getting them checked. You want to be making sure they are as strong as they can be and making sure they're going to the right sort of employer. Okay. Now, that will still be quite a few jobs. What I want you to do, again, that kind of structured approach, keep a record of what you've applied to. The more information, the better. So here I've given you an example of an application diary, right? So what the job is, the company, where it was, where you found the job, the link if you can, the job description, how you applied, what the deadline was, all this sort of stuff. There's a number of reasons I want you to do this. Probably the most pressing. First one, if you get a call about a particular job, let's say you're being invited to interview, I never want you to have to use the phrase, which job is this again? Doesn't look good, right? You need something to refer to remind you of what you applied to. But also, this is going to be a bit of a process. And you might find that there are certain problems in your job search. Let's say you've found a load of jobs through, I don't know, LinkedIn. I hear a lot about LinkedIn, applying to jobs and then hearing nothing back. Let's say you applied to loads of jobs through LinkedIn and you've not heard back from any of them. That maybe says maybe LinkedIn isn't the best resource to use because I'm just not getting anything back. You won't be able to make that decision unless you can see it, right? It's not enough to say, I feel like I'm not getting a lot from LinkedIn, so I'm not going to do anymore. If you've written it down and you see that you are not getting interview requests from a specific link or a specific company, then maybe you know that's probably a dead end. Or if you feel like you've got all these you've applied to from loads of different sources and you're not getting through to interview, that probably suggests a problem with your applications that we can help with. Or if you find that you're getting through to interview, but you're not getting anything back, you're not getting job offers, then maybe there's an interview problem. But if you record all this, you can quickly see what is working and crucially what isn't. So keep a record. Doesn't have to be like this if that doesn't work for you. This is just something I've suggested. But definitely keep that detail because it'll make diagnosing any problems a lot easier. Okay. Now, this, broadly speaking, is how the recruitment process works in the UK. We'll start with an online application of some form. Might be a CV and cover letter, might be a supporting statement like we do at the university and other universities do. It'll be some form of online application process. The next step will be a telephone or a video interview. This is where they'll either ask questions on the telephone and expect you to answer them, or you'll log into an online portal and it'll take you through what's called a video interview, where it will put questions up on the screen and you have to record an answer. After that, there'll be some kind of full interview or an assessment centre, which we're finding are very, very common. After that, you get a job. Now, depending on the employer, they might use some of this, they might use all of it. You're not necessarily going to go through each step every single time you apply to a job, but this is just to be aware that this is what you could come up against. Okay. Now, within all of this, and this is why I was really stressing that you need to keep a record of what you're applying to. Within all of it, there are two documents I want you to be aware of. The first is the job description. This kind of does what it says, right? Describes what the job is. But the more important one is the person specification. This is the profile of the ideal person for the job. This is what you will be using to write an application and prepare for an interview and assessment centre. Now, they do different things. The job description basically allows you to self-select. It allows you to decide, do I actually want to do this job or not? Which is helpful, but it's not the thing you are going to be tailoring your applications towards. This is, I guess, how it works in the UK, right? Because the person spec essentially is your cheat sheet to an application or an interview. It tells you everything that they are going to ask at application stage and at interview stage. So when you are looking at applying to a job, you need to make sure that you've covered off every bullet point on that person specification. When you are preparing for an interview, you need an answer to every bullet point on that person specification. And I say bullet point because this is how it looks. Left-hand side, we've got your job description. That's how it will generally look. Now, like I say, helpful, describes the job, but it isn't the killer app. It isn't the thing that's going to help most. The person spec is the one on the right. The person specification is what they're going to expect from a good application, an example for each of those. And an interview, this is what they're going to ask you. They're going to ask you a question, or could potentially ask you a question for each bullet point. This is how you predict what they're going to ask. This is why it is important to keep job descriptions and keep person specifications of the things that you have applied to. Okay. Now, the reason that is important is because of how recruitment works. Now, depending on the process, whether it's an application or an interview, put yourself in the mind of an employer, right? Let's say, in fact, I can give you a concrete example. Last time that we recruited for a careers advisor, we got around 150 applications for one post. Now, most of those weren't very good, so don't worry too much. You'd be amazed how rare a good application is, which is a bit of an opportunity for you guys, right? If you can make a strong application, then you're weeding out most of the competition. But what we will literally do for each of your answers, whether it's on an application or an interview, we will give you a score. So on the left-hand side, you've got all the names of everybody that's applied. This is what's called a selection grid. And on the top, we've got all the key skills we've asked for that are taken straight from a person specification, which is why that's really important. And here, we'll give you a score. I've used 1 to 4, might be 1 to 5, whatever. And the top scores are the ones that get invited to interview. And at interview, it's the top score that's the one that gets offered the job, right? That's basically it. Imagine, and I know it's a bit cringe, but bear with me. It's a bit of a game, right? The object of the game, rather, is to get the top score. And to get that, you need to make sure that for each skill, for each thing on that person spec, you're getting a high score, whether that's in application form or interview form. Now, how would you do that? There is a bit of a formula that I want you to practice and stick to, okay? Now, the first thing to say is whatever they have asked you, whatever form it's taken, whatever the question is, you need to have an example that you are speaking through. It's not enough to say, let's say the question is, give me an example of a time you've demonstrated good communication skills. It is not enough to say, I do that all the time. It's really important in my current role. You need to give me a concrete example in an application or in an interview of when you have demonstrated that skill, and give me almost a level of detail that is embarrassing, because I need to know that you actually know what you're talking about. And by giving that detail, that's what you do. Now, I've given you the STARK technique on the screen here. This is a formula for creating those examples. STAR is an acronym, and it just stands for situation, task, action, and result. So let's take that communication example. Imagine that on an application, you're trying to demonstrate communication skills, or they've asked a question at interview about communication skills. You start with the situation. What were you doing in this example? Set the scene. Was it previous work experience? Was it part of your course? Then the task. What were you trying to achieve? That is your opener. That can be 1 or 2 sentences. You don't have to give masses of detail. The next bit is the action. What you did and how you did it. That's the most important part of your entire answer, right? And it's that how that I've seen most people trip up on, because that is where the detail comes. Okay. So not just what you are communicating, if we stick with that example, but how are you communicating it? Are you using a PowerPoint? Have you varied your language to make sure that everyone in your audience could understand it? Have you made sure that it can be understood? Have you checked your language? Have you used imagery? So this is the level of detail that we need. And it needs to be about one specific time. It's not enough to say I give PowerPoint presentations as part of my course. It's this one specific PowerPoint presentation I gave went really well, and this is why. And then you finish with your results. What happened as a result of what you did? And that is when you stop writing or stop talking. You still need to give detail there, quantify as much as possible. So what was your mark? What was the score? What was the feedback? It's not enough to say, yeah, the feedback was really positive. What was the feedback? All the way through detail. And I read something really interesting today. At the end of any answer, if you can say legitimately to yourself, yeah, so what? Then it needs more. Right? And to demonstrate this, I'm going to get you in the minds of interviewers, right? So imagine you're the interviewer here and you've asked, give me an example of a time you've worked well as part of a team. And this is what they're giving you. I play football twice a week as part of a county team. We've won 6 out of our 8 matches this season. What I want you to do, score it and put your score in the chat for me. Is it a 0 with no evidence whatsoever, or is it as high as a 3 with a detailed account? And I'm going to say, be as brutal as you like. Scores in the chat for me, please. Okay, got a couple of ones. Anyone higher than a 1? Okay. Anybody got anything else, or are we agreeing on a 1? I think we're agreed on a 1. Fair enough. So, I think it would depend a little bit on the interviewer. I've known interviewers that would give it a 1. I've also known interviewers that would give it a 0. I would be inclined, and I'm always, especially when I'm applying stuff or coaching students for applying stuff, be brutal. I would give this a 0. The reason is, if you think back to STAR, they've given you the situation, all right? Twice a week, they play football. No task, no action whatsoever. They've given you a result. There's no connection between those two sentences. As far as I know, they could have been on the bench for the matches that they won, and the direct result, or rather the direct contributor to those losses. There's no understanding there of what it is to work as part of a team. I'm going to add 2 sentences, which I think will make it better. Okay. So what do you think of this? And again, scores in the chat for me. So I've added, during matches, I listen to teammates for instructions, pay attention to and anticipate the next moves rather. I communicate with the coach about how I could play better and share ideas with the rest of the team. What score are you giving that? Got a 3? 2. Okay. Anyone else? Bit of a split there. Think back to STAR. What did I say? Is this better? I mean, I would say it's better. I would actually suggest that it is between a 2 and a 3, probably closer to a 2. It's good. It's better, rather. However, I would want something more from it. I want a specific match. I want a specific time they did something as part of a team to contribute to one specific victory. The more detail, the better. So you might say this would be maybe your opening, and you might say one specific match where we were down 2-0 at half time, went into the team talk. I suggested some new ideas. We executed these new ideas by me being a team player, by supporting teammates, the result of which we went 3-2 up and won the match. Quite a bit stronger. And that's what I mean when I say you need more detail. You need a level of detail that is almost embarrassing. Okay. Now, what I would suggest, because like I said, this is kind of what we're going to say, top level, right? This is an introduction. I have a couple of things that I'd suggest on YouTube. The first one is our pathway for international students. This is where we go into lots of detail, and you'll see there the articulating your skills video. I actually show you examples of really strong and really weak interview questions. interview answers rather, where you will actually see what good looks like, what bad looks like, and what great looks like. So that, for example, what I just showed was a 2. I walk you through how to turn a 2 into a 5, because often it goes to 5. You can't really understand it until you've seen it. So this, again, part of your homework. Have a look at that YouTube playlist. Again, you'll get all these links, but there's all sorts of resources on there, both about international students, but also CVs, cover letters, interviews. So have a look on some of those. Okay. And yeah, I'm going through it here. We also have our visa talks on there, which are recorded. So you can see if you can't make it, if you couldn't make it to the last visa talk we did, or you can't make it to the one this month, there's a recorded version on there, which can be really, really helpful. In fact, I would actually suggest using YouTube quite a bit because, like I say, everything that we deliver is recorded on there. You can access it whenever you want. Now, there is another piece of advice I would suggest. We run what's called application advice appointments. These are appointments you can have to look through a CV, to look through an application, get it reviewed by one of our team. These are available every day, apart from the weekend, but every working day. They're available 24 hours in advance, all done through Career Connect. Right? So if you have something that you're applying to, or you've applied to a few things and you're just not getting very far and you think maybe your application is the thing that's letting you down, come and see us, book an appointment with us. If it's for a CV, the first thing you should do is go on to Career Connect and do the CV pathway. This will allow you to have a CV appointment. If it's a cover letter, if it's an application, don't need to do that, just book an appointment with us. And on Career Connect, you can find all the workshops I run, all of the other events that I'm sure you're aware of Career Connect, but you found this obviously, but have a look at some of those. Okay, which I guess brings me to the final section. Just bear with me 1 second. Echo, turn on the office lamp.
Okay.
There we go, that's a bit better. Now, answer the question. After graduation, can I work in the UK? I'm hoping I've kind of answered that. If you want to work in the UK longer term, you need to think about that skilled worker visa. That's hard and fast rule. What I would suggest, if you are interested in that, then you need to limit what you are applying to. You need to make sure that you're applying to roles with organizations that can sponsor you. It's as simple as that. If it's more short term, the graduate visa, post-study work visa, they are the same thing. That is pretty much it. That is the way to work for those 2 or 3 years, depending on where you're at. There are some other visas I didn't touch on. There is a short-term work visa called the International Agreement Visa. That is a harder one to go into and will depend on the employer. We also have the Tier 1 Entrepreneur Exceptional Talent and Investor Visa. We don't really offer much advice on that because it's very individual. And generally speaking, isn't really available to students. So the things I would suggest thinking about from a visa perspective, think about the skilled worker, think about the graduate visa. For more information, I have mentioned it before, but the UKISA website, there's a ton of information on there and it is updated regularly because this sort of thing, it can change relatively often. But your first step for any kind of visa advice, have a look at that recording of the visa session because like I say, those visa sessions are run by a law firm, Latitude Law. There's a lot more detail on there and they're always up to date. Okay, which brings me basically to the end, everybody. So this is our website. This would be your first stop shop for any kind of careers related question. You'll see on there we've got advice about jobs and work experience, applications. It also takes you to Career Connect where you can book appointments. Our events are on there. We also have our Which Career pages, which are sector guides for specific professions. So any questions in the first instance, get yourselves on our website. The next thing I want to say is if you just want to chat to somebody, you don't necessarily know if you need an appointment. or whatever, but you just want to have a chat, maybe we can point you in the right direction. My team, are based in University Place on the atrium. You do not need an appointment. It's on the first floor. We're open between 10 and 4 every day. Just rock up, ask us a question. We might point you in the right direction. We might suggest an appointment or an event. But if you just want to have a chat, come and see us. Really friendly bunch. And we've got a really experienced team that can help. And there's a few last minute things. So hopefully you're aware, but March is pretty much International Student Month with a ton of workshops, all on Career Connect. This is one of them. This is the Developing Confidence for International Sessions. This is a series of 3 sessions that will help increase your confidence in terms of applying for jobs, the UK job market, CV writing, English language support. So if you feel like you would benefit from that, I know there are still spaces available, but you place on Career Connect. This is really helpful. All the feedback we get from students that attend say they really like these sessions. We also have, and these 3 are separate, separate events. We have the Asia Careers Insights Conference, which is ongoing. That starts tomorrow. There are graduate opportunities all over Asia. You'll see there's one for Hong Kong on there, but there's also others. These QR codes lead to these individual sessions. I've already talked about the Developing Confidence session, and there it is. We've got a visa session, which I think will be hybrid, but I'm not quite sure. All the details are on Career Connect, but that is on the 26th of March. So if you're at all unsure or you just want to have a chat about visas, come along to that session. Okay, now I know I'm throwing loads of QR codes at you. Last 2, I promise. This one is just for our feedback survey. If you do have the time, we'd really appreciate it if you could scan that QR code and just give you feedback. And I get it. I know I suffer from it myself. We're all fed up of feedback surveys, completely understand. We do really value your feedback. A lot of what we are doing this year is a direct result of the feedback we received last year. If you could just give us some of your thoughts, we really, really appreciate it. I'll give you a second to do that. And then the last slide I'm going to put up is the attendance slide. If anybody didn't get the chance to scan this, this is to make sure that I can register your attendance at the event. And then you'll, towards the end of the week, be sent the recording of this session and the slides. So all those links, they'll be included. Which pretty much, everybody, brings me to the end. So what I will do is stop the recording.